Hello, welcome back. I'm Jeff Byers, and this is our final module for our weapon, our sci-fi weapon. So you need to probably set up your layers and get everything cleaned up so you don't mistake something for another, or you don't have duplicates of objects. So make sure that you have a really efficient layer stack. So you can see I've got my low poly with UVs, my low poly triangulated. Okay, let me go ahead and put on wireframe on shaded. There we go. And you can see we got our medium poly. Okay, we want to keep that. We're not going to use that again, but we'll have it in case we want to make changes. And then we've got our high poly. Okay, that's going to be used for baking. Okay, so our low poly is where the gun we're going to use to present our textures on, and the low poly triangulated one is the one we're going to bring into Substance Painter just to use it to make sure that our textures go on properly and it goes on into the Substance Painter. Okay, so before we do that, we need to make sure that our low poly, we delete by type history and we freeze transformations. We double check our UVs because most of the time you guys think that you've got these UVs laid out properly, but you don't. So double check that. The first thing you want to do is just make sure there's enough space. You have to keep the shells. They cannot be touching each other. They cannot be overlapping each other. So if you get an error when you bring it into Substance Painter, that means that you've got UVs. Let me show you what I mean. If UVs that are over, okay, they're going over, or they're overlapping and touching each other. You cannot have a UV shell touching the side of a border. That's what a border is here. Okay. You cannot have it touching. You can't have it going over. Okay. So leave lots of space. As you can see, I've made lots of space between all my pieces. They don't even come close to touching the border or overlapping each other. Okay? All right. Overlapping means you take a UV shell and you put it over top of each other. Now, I do have overlapping here, but it's probably not a good idea because I could get some issues with overlapping UVs. Okay? One is the inside, one's the outside. Okay? So what we can do is, if you're worried about that, or if you have some issues, and that could be a problem, so you might want to move those over to a different shell. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Right now I'm going to give it a try, see if that works. Now the only reason why this probably would work is because they're overlapping exactly. And then you have my other UV shells. Okay? I know this is going to work because I spent a lot of time making sure that they do not touch. Okay? They're not even close. So if you get real close to it, you can see that they're all separated, and we've got a good UV efficient UV shell packing, and I'm just double checking everything, and this is what you're going to be doing too as well. Okay. Now if you get errors, you know that you're going to have UV shells that are going over or overlapping, and Substance Painter does not like that. In fact, it won't let you do anything else. Okay. So once the UVs are efficiently packed, you're going to go into UV snapshot. You have to count how many UV shells you have. So we've got 10 across, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So I've got 17. Okay. So U is 17 for me. And then, of course, we have 2 shells up. Okay. 1, 2. So 17 going across here, and then we got some more, 7 more here, and then that is taking 2 rows. So 17 and 2. That's how it works. Okay. Now, because I've got so many shells, I'm going to keep it down to 2048. Now, if you have like 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6, you can probably go to 4096. But right now we're just doing this. Okay. So you want to browse and make sure you put your UV shells into, and you need to name it appropriately. Okay, so let's just call whatever. We can just call this whatever. So I'm going to put my name on it, and we're going to do test SP. Okay, and we're going to call this, let's just call this import. There we go. And this will be, we'll call this low poly. All right, so everything's set up. I'm going to show you two ways. The first way is what I was showing the students before, and if you run into issues you just can't get past, then I'm going to show you another way to try and see if we can get a better bake. Okay, so there's two ways we're going to do it, and I'll show you the first way first. Okay, so when that's all done, you just apply and close. Okay, now it's giving me an error. Okay, so I'm going to close that. I'm going to move that over, and what it's telling me is that this object needs to be in object mode. So let's go into object mode. There we go. So now we can go ahead and do it again. Browse, and it's giving me this. Hopefully it doesn't close and lock up, but I'm going to try this again. So you have to be in object mode for this to work. Low poly test SP import. There we go. Save that, and now it should say, it shouldn't give us any warnings. So go ahead and apply and close. It may take a while for it to work because it's writing all those UVs out separately. So now I can close that, and I can go ahead and click on this, and let's go ahead and save the file. It's a good idea once you save everything. And I'm just going to call this FIN. So I'm all done. Okay. All right. So next thing you want to do is make sure that your high poly is basically over underneath the low poly. It doesn't have to be exact. I mean, it should still bake okay. And I've already tested the bake, and it bakes okay. The only thing that I've got, I might have issues with is this side and this side as far as the low poly goes. So let's take a look at those. All right, so I'm going to look at those UVs real quick, and I think if you have red, you're going to have to flip those over. So I'm going to go click on UV editor, and it's these guys right here. So I'm going to click on this guy. It says everything's okay. Everything in blue is okay. That means that you don't have any reversed normals, okay? And that's that guy right here, okay? And then stretching, there's no stretching. I didn't think there would be. And if there is, it's probably on that round little thing right there, but it's not too bad. Pink is okay. Bright red is bad, and bright blue is really bad. So just look for that, and I'm going to turn those off. All right, so we're good to go. Let's go back into that mode. All right, so we're all done. Everything looks good. The high poly is underneath the low poly, or just a little bit smaller. If you need to make changes, now's the time to do it. And then you need to export. So make sure you go to File, Export, Selection. Okay. All right. OBJ export, export selection. And then you want to call it your first initial, last name. This will be low poly, and this is going to be test SP. There we go. And that's going to be the low poly. So export selection. I'm going to put a 1_1 and then a. That way I know it's going to go to the top. Oops. So it'll go to top of the list. Okay. And then we will hide that one and select the high poly. Again, make sure that you you clear the history, freeze transformations, and go into File. Now you don't need to have UVs mapped on there. Okay, and we're going to save that out, export that one as an OBJ. We're do the same thing, so I'm just going to click on the one we have above and just replace it with hi. There we go. Okay. That is it. Once that's done, now this is a high poly, so it might take a little bit longer. Okay, once it's saved, you can click off. All right, and then we're going to start SP, and I'll be back in just a second.